Hello everybody, welcome to Asa Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you have not already, and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers, so your subscription will be much appreciated. So for today's video, I decided I wanted to talk about the Portland Trailblazers Cleveland Cavaliers game that I watched last night, because it kind of co-aligns with some points that I've made about the Portland Trailblazers in the past. I also specifically sought out a Blazers game because I wanted to talk about them, because things have not been going their way as of late. So this game, I got a lot of insight on the Blazers and how they've been lately, because I haven't really caught one of their games recently. And I also want to talk about the Cavaliers, because I think that this Cavaliers roster, it's up there with some of my favorite teams of all time, because I really love the backcourt of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Those are two of my favorite guards in the league. And I really like the dynamic of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. A lot of plays in this game in particular were connections between those two players, especially Evan Mobley. I think had like 3 different alley-oops to Jarrett Allen, which I find that interesting, where especially having the option for both of them as alley-oop targets is really significant. But because they're both smart enough passers, if you bring help at the wrong time, they're both capable of zipping a pass real quick to the rim that the opposite player is going to be able to catch pretty easily. And it's an interesting dynamic to bring to the offense. There were a ton of alley-oops in this game because of that. And I really like that, and really just their wing situation is the only thing to figure out. I think Kevin Love off the bench is really cool. I just really like this roster. So I love tuning into Cavs games, and I wanted to talk about the Blazers, so here we go. I kind of already gave my piece on what I like about the Cavaliers, but I guess to just talk about how they performed in this game in particular, I would honestly say, if I'm recalling correctly anyways, I can check the box score just so I don't embarrass myself if I miss something. Yeah, that was correct. This didn't seem like an especially, crazy win for this team. It really felt like, really on the side of both of these teams, it just felt like the Cavaliers were the better team, so they ended up winning. And that's in spite of the fact, of course, that Damian Lillard had a 50-piece, but we'll talk about that in a second, because I'm opening with the Cavaliers. Garland had a 20-10 game, which is pretty much what you can expect from him, maybe a little bit inefficient, but it was fine. Donovan Mitchell had 26, and he didn't really have a big presence in the game until, I would say, the fourth quarter. He started to turn it up and had a couple of buckets, pretty significant buckets back-to-back, including a really difficult drive where a shot just barely squeaked over the rim. And then Jarrett Allen, 24 and 10. A lot of those alley-oops that I mentioned he benefited from. I'm not kidding, there were minimum 4. So minimum 8 of those 24 points were just alley-oops. Evan Mobley had his standard game. It was pretty much everybody showed up and did their job correctly, and that's all that mattered, other than Kevin Love, who did have 0 points and I guess got hurt. I didn't even catch that. I guess I missed it. But yeah, on Portland's end of things, though, they're the team that we really want to talk about. I was almost contemplating making a follow-up video on the Portland Trailblazers, because me and Alex Hoops did a video kind of talking about this Blazers roster and what we expected of them, and then I made a broader point about Dame's future in Portland and why this is once again just kind of wasting everybody's time, which is the thing I say about the Blazers all the time, is it's just delaying the inevitable constantly. I actually liked this roster a lot early going into the year, and they were doing super good early on, and then I think they fell off for a bit. I don't remember exactly the reason why. I think maybe because Dame got hurt or something, and then they started to rise back up, and then Dame has been back, and since he's been back, the things have not been especially great. And the team that opened up the year making me question, like, is this actually going to be like a potentially like conference finals tier team? That's what I was thinking very early on. To questioning if this team is, if I'm checking the standings, where are they in the standings? Yeah, they're not even in, like, questioning if they're going to be in the play-in is what I was going to say. They're just outside of the play-in right now. I would bet on them making it, but also they got a lot of good teams ahead of them. So yeah, the Blazers are kind of back in the exact same territory that we've always known them to be. The roster around him is cool. I don't think anyone would deny that there's some talent around him. Anthony Simons is a really good young star guard. I would say he's not necessarily the most reliable in the world all the time, just because of the fact that he is that young, and he's a huge defensive liability at times. But even with that fact, he's a huge plus. He essentially replaces what CJ McCollum did in the past for Dame, except he's an even better three-point shooter, and I would argue probably a better playmaker. I don't know about a better player overall. CJ was more poised, but that's a whole other thing. But Jeremy Grant, breakout year for the Blazers. He has 22 in this game. Pretty standard game from him. And he's been really, really good for them. The best version of Jeremy Grant we have seen by far. It's like he combined the efficiency and the defense of when he was a role player to like the standard 3-and-D role player to, and then he combined also what he was doing in Detroit where he was doing shot creation. He now is like shot creating a lot and also doing the role player stuff, and all of it is super efficient. He's shooting like above 40% from three. I'm pretty confident. Around 50% from the field. I couldn't tell you the exact what his numbers are, but I just know they're in the 20s and it's the efficiency's there. So he's essentially had star level production there. Anthony Simons on the day-to-day basis usually does. And yet, in spite of that, we're not really seeing that much success. Josh Hart, I think, is a fine starter, and I think Nurkic is cool. I do think if there was any place I would look to upgrade the starting lineup, it would start at the center position. But I also don't think that it's that Nurkic is like a problem necessarily. He's good, like he's usually good. But you could, I think if there's anybody, I think Josh Hart's better than him, and then obviously those other three definitely are. So if I was anyone going to be replaced, it would be Nurkic. But off of the bench, Drew Eubanks is cool. Gary Payton's really good. And Shadon Sharp is, or I might be saying that wrong. Is it Shadon? I forgot. I apologize if I'm saying it wrong. But he's a super duper crazy athlete. Had a tip dunk that was an offensive interference, so it didn't count. But like his head was at the rim and he got there like it was nothing. I would say the bench for the Blazers overall is nothing special, and that starting lineup is good, but it's also not like categorically one of the like 5 best starting lineups in the league. It's not amazing by any means. Like if you're considering like Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant star level players with how they've been playing this year, if you're going to say you have 3 star level production players, that's kind of a weak core 3. But it's also still 3. So there is that worth mentioning. You have 3 20-point scorers, which is very significant. Although less significant now than it would have been a long time ago, because of just how many players are capable of scoring 20 plus these days. Because I believe it's in the 50s, the amount of players who average 20 points in the league, which is truly absurd to me, but that's a whole other conversation. But we're going to focus this back on Damian Lillard. My whole ramble about the Portland Trailblazers, I think I kind of lost the point as I was talking about the actual game at hand. But the Trailblazers are just okay again. And Damian Lillard is doing amazing stuff. I didn't get almost cursed, but I didn't do it because I'm trying to get better RPMs. Doing amazing stuff. He has 50 points in this game. Didn't really distribute the ball all that amazingly, although there was one play in particular, like probably my favorite play from Dame in this game, in the 50 piece that he had, was one of the 3 assists he had to Yusuf Nurkic, where they just displayed a phenomenal connection in the 2-man game. And that's something that him and Nurk have, which is like reasonably hard to replace. So I'm not, I don't want to come off like I'm taking shots at Nurkic. But yeah, this roster is perfectly fine. And Damian Lillard's a really good player and can be a superstar level player, especially in a playoff setting. And that means that the team can maybe make the second round. But it's kind of just a repeat of the same thing. Seeing Damian Lillard put up 50 points in a game and walking away with a loss is not an unfamiliar thing. I'm not surprised by this at all. It's happened in the playoffs. It happens in the regular season all the time. It's a very consistent thing. In fact, I would love to see what Dame's record is for his career when he has like 50 or like 45 plus. I'm sure it's still positive because obviously going off like that probably correlates to more winning. But I do think it's probably a lower win percentage than it should be because it's something that just happens a lot, especially in recent history. So, yeah, it just kind of feels like same old, same old. Portland Trailblazers are the same Portland Trailblazers they've always been. They're not. Like, it's a very different roster. It has a vibe to it that I enjoy much more. I like this team more than any Blazers team that I have seen post LaMarcus Aldridge leaving. So I will give them that this is the roster that I like the most. It's a little bit of a cheat because Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant were two of my favorite role players. And I've been on the Anthony Simons train as soon as my friends made sure that I was. Yeah, the Blazers, I like this team quite a bit, which is the sad part of this, but it's just kind of the same thing again. It's a repeat, it's the same story, so that's what I'm going to title this video, like, this is the same old story or whatever. Anyways, yeah, little bit of a depressing note, but I do want to throw in there just to talk about the Cavs again. I really like this Cavs team, and I don't even think this is necessarily a terrible performance on the Blazers' part. I'll say from like Anthony Simons had a little bit of a low game, but that's about it. Everybody else kind of showed up and did what they were supposed to. Dame kind of came out into this game like firing, like he was specifically out to get a high volume of points. It really felt like that. Not in a way that I mean to criticize him. I'm just saying he came out in there here aggressive, and he was aggressive the whole way through. But I don't think this is necessarily even an underperformance from the Blazers. This is honestly probably them at their best, considering Dame had that 50 piece, and even them at their best is not able to defeat a team that's not even really considered a favorite. Even though a lot of people would say they could be a contender, the Cavs are definitely not the favorite in the East for most people. So, yeah, the Blazers just aren't as good, and that's what happened. Anyways, that's my thoughts on this game, and that is it. Goodbye.